Every genocide in history started the same way. Not with mass killings, not with bombs, but with words. The kind of words you're about to hear. There's a psychological pattern that's been used to justify every mass atrocity in history. A pattern so powerful that even good people, people who see themselves as moral, can fall for it without realizing. And the worst part? This isn't just history. This mindset is still everywhere. You've seen it before, whether it's white supremacists, radical extremists, or even everyday conversations. The idea that some people are less human than others. This is dehumanization. The clip I'm about to show you is dehumanization at work. The Two Nice Jewish Boys podcast, a well-known English language show from Israel, often discusses politics, history, and contemporary issues. In this clip, the hosts have a conversation so shocking, so devoid of basic humanity, that it shows just how easily people can slip into dehumanizing others without even thinking twice.
I would, if you gave me a button to just erase Gaza, every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow, I would press it in a second. That's just, I think most Israelis
if
probably
that's
agree.
the choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, even if it's not like right now,
Yeah, no.
I would press it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and same with the territories.
I would press it right now.
Mm-hmm.
No choice. No, Shalon is safe at home. God willing. I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in like an hour.
No, I'm saying for the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would press it right now. Give me that button and press it right now.
there you go.
And I think most Israelis would.
Yeah, most Jewish
They wouldn't.
Israelis.
They wouldn't post. They wouldn't talk about it like I am.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't post. They wouldn't say I pressed it,
Yeah,
but they would.
they
press
don't
it.
have balls of steel like you.
They would, but they would press it. You right? Like if they were in a
Yeah.
closet alone, they would. They wouldn't even hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
Someone came to them and Hadar said, "No one will know. You press this, all the Palestinians are gone." You'd be like, "Fucking hey, is there another one?"
Mm-hmm.
No one actually gives a shit. Zero people in Israel. If you go up to them and you're like, do you care if this baby in Gaza gets polio? They'll be like, I don't fucking just.
Yeah,
get out
Yariv
of-"
Oppenheimer would care.
Yeah, okay. There'll be like 20 people who care, and they're all wearing Meretz shirts. Like, fuck them. But seriously, nobody would give a shit. They'd be like, leave me alone, man. I'm trying to buy
Eat ice
shit
cream.
for Shabbat.
Yeah.
Fuck off. I don't care about this Gazan kid
Yeah.
with polio.
Also, as long as they're in their Nakba state in their tents, and we're living still, if you put aside the news, day to day is okay. Yesterday we went to a concert.
Yeah.
In Erkon Park. We had lots of fun, me and my girlfriend. Shalom Chanoch. We danced. And it was amazing. And you can't help but think it's nice to know that you're dancing in a concert while hundreds of thousands of Gazans are,
Homeless.
like sitting in a tent and eating.
Makes it even better.
Yeah.
More enjoyable concert. If only they put the
live video
footage
feed.
of Gaza. But seriously, you guys that. That's what people don't understand. Look, I know that you guys might be appalled by this, some of the listeners, but seriously, this is how Israelis feel. And you might think that Eitan Weinstein and Naor, who refuses to kind of back me up on it publicly.
I'm from the UN.
Yeah, he's the UN. But you might think I'm extreme. But I have conversations with lots of people, coworkers, friends. People enjoy knowing that they are suffering.
No, also it's very prominent on Twitter.
As a Jewish people, bring flourishing to a place while the Palestinians just bring shit culture and destruction. It's like no one talks about the fact everything is about comparing us, right? And saying, oh, well, what would we do in this situation? What would they do in this situation? And trying to, it's like, no, we're better. We're just better. We're better. I I don't know how else to put it.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. We're better. We have a better culture. We're a better society. And yes, it would be a great thing if we took over all the West Bank and they weren't there.
The clip isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a psychological pattern that is repeated throughout history. The moment people are stripped of their humanity, anything becomes justifiable. Violence, oppression, even genocide. This isn't just dangerous rhetoric. This is how mass suffering begins. This is how evil takes hold, one word, one justification at a time. The Holocaust stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history. Millions of Jewish men, women, and children were systematically murdered after years of being stripped of their humanity. But genocide doesn't begin with mass killings. It begins with dehumanization. The Nazis were masters of this process. They used propaganda, laws, and social policies to condition an entire society to see Jews, Slavs, and other groups as subhuman. Through relentless messaging, they convinced ordinary people that these groups were dangerous, inferior, and unworthy of compassion. This is how genocide is always justified, by first making the victims seem less than human. The Nazis perfected this technique, and today we see similar rhetoric being used against Palestinians. The moment a group is no longer seen as fully human, anything can be justified against them. After the Holocaust, the world rallied around a phrase that was meant to serve as a permanent warning: never again. It was a promise, a vow that humanity would never allow such atrocities to happen again. Yet, ironically, the very people who coined that phrase, who were once the victims of systematic dehumanization, are now engaging in similar behavior against another group. In the podcast clip you just heard, the speaker didn't just express his own view. He stated that most Israelis would feel the same way, that the majority of Israeli society would want Gaza wiped off the map. This isn't about a fringe belief. It's a widely accepted sentiment, normalized through rhetoric, fear, and moral disengagement. The same justifications that the Nazis used, the same rhetoric, the same psychological detachment, now turn towards the Palestinian people. This isn't about one group or ideology. This is about human nature. Dehumanization isn't exclusive to any one people. It's a psychological mechanism that anyone can fall into, no matter their history. So how does this happen? How do people who should know the cost of dehumanization become the ones engaging in it? To understand that, we need to break down the psychology behind dehumanization, what drives it, and why people justify it. One of the first steps in dehumanization is the belief that some people are inherently superior to others. This belief can take many forms: racial, religious, ethnic, national, but at its core, it allows people to justify exclusion, discrimination, and even violence. One of the clearest examples of this is the Hindu caste system and the persecution of the Dalit people. For centuries, Hindu society was structured on a rigid caste system where people were ranked by birth into a hierarchy of worth. At the top were Brahmins, considered spiritually pure and privileged. Below them were the Kshatriyas, the warrior and ruling class, followed by the Vaishyas, who were merchants and traders. Beneath them were the Shudras, the laborers and service workers. And at the very bottom, outside the caste system entirely, were the Dalits, once referred to as untouchables. They were seen as impure, subhuman, and condemned to a life of servitude and suffering. And while India has officially banned caste-based discrimination, the reality is far different. Dalits still face systemic oppression, violent attacks, and social exclusion. From being denied temple entry to suffering brutal honor killings, their persecution is far from over. And here's the thing: when you think you're better than someone, you naturally treat them worse. The moment you see someone as beneath you, their suffering stops mattering. That's why history's worst atrocities all started with the same idea, that one group of people was just worth more than another. And just as powerful, and maybe even more dangerous way dehumanization happens is through fear. When people feel threatened, their ability to see others as human collapses. They don't see individuals anymore. They see a collective enemy. And where fear takes over, anything becomes justifiable. When people fear for their survival, morality disappears. In Rwanda in 1994, Hutu leaders convinced an entire nation that their neighbors, the Tutsi minority, were an existential threat. The media bombarded people with messages that Tutsis were cockroaches who needed to be eliminated before they took over. Every day, radio broadcasts called for their extermination. And within 100 days, nearly 1 million people were slaughtered, often by their own neighbors, people they had lived beside for years. This wasn't just political conflict. It was mass hysteria fueled by fear. Once you convince people that another group is an existential threat, anything becomes justifiable. Fear doesn't just make people dangerous, it makes them believe they're justified. When people truly believe their survival is at risk, there's no limit to what they will do. They stop seeing their actions as cruelty and start seeing them as necessity. Sometimes, it's not fear that fuels dehumanization, it's righteousness. Some of history's worst atrocities weren't carried out by people who were scared. They were carried out by people who believed they were saving the world. No one sees themselves as the villain. Even history's worst atrocities were committed by people who believed they were acting for a higher purpose. Whether it was for God, the greater good, or a utopian future, people justified their actions as necessary, even righteous. Few events in history embody this more than the Crusades. Christian knights slaughtered entire cities convinced they were carrying out God's will. They were told by the Pope himself that killing non-believers wasn't just allowed, it was a holy duty. And if they died in battle, their sins would be erased, guaranteeing them a place in heaven. With that belief, no act of violence was too extreme. In the siege of Jerusalem, Crusaders massacred men, women, and children, turning the streets red with blood. They believed they weren't just fighting a war, they were purging evil from the world. And because of that conviction, the slaughter wasn't just excusable, it was sacred. The most dangerous people in history weren't just driven by hate, they were driven by conviction. They didn't believe they were evil, they believed they were right. And once people believe their cruelty is righteous, stopping them becomes almost impossible. The final stage of dehumanization is when cruelty stops feeling like cruelty. When oppression and violence become part of daily life, people stop questioning it. They stop resisting it. And eventually, they stop seeing it as wrong at all. Few examples show this better than the transatlantic slave trade. Over 12 million people were kidnapped, sold, and forced into brutal labor across the Americas. They were worked to death, beaten, and treated as property. But perhaps the most terrifying part? For centuries, this wasn't seen as a moral issue. It was just how the world worked. Slavery wasn't just accepted, it was built into the economy. Nations depended on it. Politicians defended it. Even religious leaders justified it. Some argued that enslaved people were inferior by nature. Others claimed it was part of God's plan. And because of that, for generations, people could witness human beings in chains and feel nothing at all. Because to them, that was just life. When people stop seeing others as human, there are no limits to what they can justify. Atrocities don't happen in a vacuum. They build up over time as cruelty becomes easier to accept. The moment a group is stripped of its humanity, history has shown us exactly where it leads. And this isn't just something of the past. Around the world today, people are still being dehumanized, whether through war, propaganda, or social and political movements. The labels change, but the psychology remains the same. We've only scratched the surface in this video. The truth is, dehumanization has existed in every era, every ideology, and every religion. No group is immune. From the rape of Nanking to South African apartheid, from the eradication of Native Americans to countless other atrocities, history is filled with examples too numerous to name, and each time the perpetrators believed they were right. Dehumanization isn't just a historical pattern, it's the foundation of evil itself. It strips away empathy, justifies cruelty, and turns ordinary people into monsters. And once we accept that mindset, we set the stage for history to repeat itself. History's greatest villains never saw themselves as evil. They believed they were heroes, that their cruelty was justified, that they were building a better world, and that's exactly why it happened. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, "To do evil, a human being must first believe that what he is doing is good, or else that it is a well-considered act of conformity with natural law." If you found this video insightful, you might like another one on a similar topic. Click on the thumbnail to watch or keep exploring. Also, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel.